Hello, welcome to the Quicksilver Adventuring League. Today I thought I'd go over the differences between the 2014 and the 2024 Rogue, and I'll be interjecting some of my commentary and thoughts on the changes. But yeah, if you end up liking this channel, please subscribe and if you like the video. But here we go. When it comes to the core traits, there's actually a few slight changes here. For example, like you still get 4 skills to choose from, but for some reason they removed performance from the available skill list at start, which feels a little odd to me because it seems like to me rogues, one of their aspects could be performance. Of course, they can pick it later, but I can see a beginning level 1 rogue having performance as a main ability, but it's gone. And then the other changes is weapons. It was simple weapons plus a few extras like rapier, but now it's simple weapons plus weapons with the finesse and light property, which that's fine. It just expands the list slightly. The rogue features section, that chart is actually the same. It's just structured slightly differently, but yeah, no real updates there other than the slight changes to what you gain at each level, but I'll be going into that now. Expertise, that actually remains the same. You still get 2 proficiencies. You get to double the proficiency bonus in starting at level 1 and 2 more at level 6. The only difference between the 2 books I can see is that the 2014 was actually explained it a little bit better, whereas the 2024 just simply says you gain expertise. So for new players that don't know what that is, we'll have to go look it up somewhere else, whereas the 2014 just quickly outlined it. So, okay. Next is sneak attack, which is basically I view it as like the bread and butter of the rogue class. I mean, it's you get once per turn, you get an extra D6 damage that increases by the level of the rogue, and it's on the chart that I just mentioned and showed on the screen. There is a subtle difference between the 2014 and the 2024. In the 2014, it calls out that it must be an enemy of your target within 5 feet of the target for you to be able to gain sneak attack. But in the new one, it says it must have one of your allies present. So in the new 2024, you have to have a friendly person nearby to be able to do the sneak attack in that scenario. Whereas prior, you could have an enemy of your target within 5 feet. Like you could have a 3-way combat between 3 different groups and still have someone that's not your ally give you your sneak attack bonus, but no longer. I guess the logic behind this is that since you don't need advantage if it's one of your allies, then maybe your ally is being cover for you to try to be sneaky and get in that sneak attack, whereas an enemy of your target may not do that same benefit for you because they may be your enemy as well. So kind of makes sense in my head. Thieves' Cant basically functions the same way. It's just still a secret language that rogues use to communicate thoughts and ideas, just like any other language. But now you get to learn an extra language of your choice. So next is a new addition, weapon masteries. So rogues can now get 2 weapons of their choice that they gain the weapon mastery ability in. And so they just get to pick those 2. Then every long rest, they get to swap it out with, or have the option to swap it out with 2 other weapons or swap one out with another weapon. I'm still having a little trouble wrapping my head around this one. Simply the thought of I'm very well trained in a weapon and I can sleep on it, rest, do a little extra training, swap out to another one. Yeah, I probably would have done it like level 1, you get 2, and then maybe you get a 3rd one later on, and then a 4th to represent that training. But it just feels a little odd to me to be able to, swap it out in an 8-hour period. But that's what it is. Next is cutting action, and that hasn't changed at all. That still as a bonus action, you can take the dash, disengage, or hide option. So still here. Next is rogue subclasses, but I'm actually going to put them at the end of the video instead of right here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out the entire rogue through level 20, and then I'll move right into the 4 subclasses in the new Players Handbook and discuss them. But yeah, I'll put a timestamp on the video here. If you want to jump to that portion of the video, feel free. And also at level 3, along with the subclasses, you gain steady aim. This is actual new ability that was not present in 2014. So essentially, with steady aim, you can not move, and then you gain advantage on your next attack. And the drawback to that is that, again, with not moving at the beginning, you cannot move after you have made the attack. Next is ability score improvement. And I've said it in every video I've done so far for class changes, but I wish they had just said at level 4 you gain a feat, because even in the verbiage underneath it says you can have the option to get the ability score improvement feat or gain a feat, and ability score improvement's repeatable. So just feels to me a bit more natural if they just said you gain a feat. But hey. Okay, first up at level 5 is Uncanny Dodge. There's no change here. If the attack hits you, you can see you can use your reaction to have the damage. Next to level 5 is Cunning Strike, and this is actually a new ability for the rogue, which is actually quite an interesting addition, which gives them some versatility with their sneak attack. But so you can actually gain some extra abilities, and each ability will have a die cost. So like a 1d6, 2d6, 3d6, etc. But here at level 5, each of the 3 new additions is a 1d6 cost, and you actually cause your target to have to make a DC save, or the effect takes effect. The first one is poison, and the target has to make a Constitution save or have the poisoned effect on them, and they can repeat the save every turn, but it can last up to a minute. Next is trip, and the target actually trips and is considered prone after that. And next is actually a benefit for the rogue, which is withdrawal. And you can move up to half your movement away without provoking opportunity attacks. So it's get in, hit, get out. Next is evasion. And they actually cleaned up the verbiage on this one. Before in 2014, there's a little bit of confusion because in the first sentence, it says that it actually applies to area effect abilities that impact the rogue. And then right after it says dex saves, you can either take half damage or no damage from a fail or a pass. And now in the 2024, it just removes the area effect altogether, because it implied in the first one where the area effect was said, don't think it really applied to it. And it actually, the ability in 2014 applied to all dex saves that impacted the rogue. But now they cleaned it up and cleared it up for 2024. And the only other thing they added was you can't be incapacitated, which makes total sense. Next is reliable talent, and it basically functions the same as where any skill that you can apply a proficiency bonus to, you now cannot roll below a 10. If you roll a 9 or lower, you now treat that roll as a 10. So the only change to this, though, is it was a level 11, now it's level 7. So you get it much earlier as a rogue. Next is a new level 11 ability, Improved Cunning Strike. So essentially it's the same as Cunning Strike, but now instead of being limited to one ability like Trip and Withdrawal, now you can do 2. You still have to spin the die, but you can now do 2 per strike. Next to level 14 was in 2014 Blind Sense, where you could sense invisible creatures within 10 feet. But this ability is no more. Gone, gone, gone. With the loss of blind sense, they've now added devious strikes. So you have 3 new abilities to use with cunning strikes. And the first one is daze. So essentially it's a cost 2d6, and the target can make a Constitution save, or if they fail their next turn, they can either do a move, an action, or a bonus action. Not anything else, just one of those. Then after that is knockout, which this is actually quite powerful, and it actually is represented that way because this thing requires 6d6 to be able to use. And essentially, if they fail the save, then they are unconscious for a minute. They can repeat the save every turn, but they're literally knocked out for up to a minute. Next is obscure, and this costs 3d6. And if they fail a dexterity save, then they are blinded till the end of their next turn. Next, level 15, Slippery Mind, and there's no change here. The rogue just gains proficiency in wisdom and charisma saves now. So, no change. Next to level 18 is Elusive, and there's no change here. This is, in my mind, this is actually quite a strong ability. Unless you're incapacitated, no attack can have advantage against you. Next to level 19 is the Epic Boon, which is a something that every class gets now. And so before level 20 play, you get to gain the Epic Boon, whereas before, if you're playing beyond level 20, then you could gain these extra abilities instead of leveling up. But I think it's a nice little addition to all the classes. And then at level 20, Stroke of Luck. There's no real change here. They streamlined the verbiage a little bit. Next is Rogue Subclasses. They used to call rogue archetypes, but now they have thief, assassin, arcane trickster, and soul knife in 2024. 2014 had thief, assassin, and arcane trickster. So they've added one to the base book, and I'm going to go over them now. Starting with the arcane trickster. With cantrips, and there's really not a change here except for at level 3 you gain spellcasting, but cantrips you get 3. You still get mage hand plus 2 others. But now, as you level up, you can swap out 2 of those, one of those cantrips of the 2 non-mage hand cantrips. So once per level, you can start tweaking your cantrips, and still at 10th level, you gain a third one beyond mage hand. The spell slots you get per level are the same. They start at level 3, they go through level 20, and you still cannot cast spells beyond level 4. The prepared spell list is actually pretty much the same, except for the initial spells in the 2014 had to be enchantment or illusion, and that restriction is now gone. And you can still swap out as you gain a level. You can still swap out one spell on your list with with a new spell from the same wizard list, but that ability is still there. But again, the restriction on the enchantment and illusion is the big change here, where that restriction is just gone and you've freed up all wizard spells. Next is Mage Hand Ledger Domain. And this is basically the same, though they've streamlined the verbiage. Only real change now is that it's from an action, now it's cast as a bonus action, and they just say they can do sleight of hand checks. Whereas in the 2014, it actually had a list of things you could do. And I feel like this streamlining is actually an improvement. Just anything that's sleight of hand, apparently you can do with this ability, and the hand's still invisible. Next is Magical Ambush. This function is basically the same, but there's a slight verbiage tweak. So essentially in the 2014, if you were hidden from your target, it has disadvantage on a spell cast by you. Whereas in 2024, if you have the invisible condition, then the creature or target has disadvantage on the spell cast by you. Next is Versatile Trickster. And this one actually changed quite a bit between 2014 and 2024. In 2014, you had the ability to basically use your mage hand to kind of distract the target and gain advantage on attack rolls till the end of the turn. But in 2024, you still have mage hand as the aspect of the ability, but now as you use the trip option of your Cunning Strike, you can actually try to trip a second target, which would knock, in theory, if both fail their saves, you would knock 2 targets prone, which is just different from the other, but it's limited to after you do a Cunning Strike. So long as you're doing a Cunning Strike, you can trip 2 targets, but the 2014 felt a lot more streamlined to me, where it was just you gain advantage on target to the end of the turn. So I kind of like the 2014 a little bit better, just simply because this one feels a little more cumbersome. It might have some nice role-playing flair, maybe, and be very helpful situational, but I don't know, not sold yet. And lastly is Spell Thief. This actually functions the same, and it still is a very powerful counter spell. But you still can counter a spell that is level 1 or higher, and then it has to be something you can cast, so I guess 1 through 4. But you counter spell it, and then for the next 8 hours, you have the option to cast it yourself, and the target that you stole the spell from does not. So that's pretty powerful. The next subclass I'm going to go over is the Assassin. And first off is, Assassinate. And so now in the new one, you actually gain advantage on initiative rolls, which in my mind, that's a huge gain for any class that has it. And there's not many. In 2014, if you go before another creature, you have advantage on the attack roll, and any hits you score against a creature that was surprised are automatically critical hits. Then in 2024, you also have advantage on any creature that has not taken a turn yet. But then also, if you score a hit against anyone with a sneak attack, then you actually do extra damage of the weapon type equal to your rogue level. So a level 4 rogue would do 4 extra points of damage. I actually kind of like the critical hit from the prior 2014 better than this, but with that advantage on the initiative, I'll take that little trade-off. Next is Assassin's Tools, which they just called bonus proficiencies before. It's exactly the same. You gain proficiency in a Disguise Kit and Poisoner's Kit. Next is Infiltration Expertise. And this one actually got quite a boost too. You still get to basically find a way to mimic someone. In the 2014, you had to spend a week. There was a gold value, which is about 25 gold. And then you forge documents, et cetera. You spend a lot of in-game, week passes. I mean, you could just say week passes, but you spend a lot of in-game time developing this persona. And then you are actually able to become that person. But now in 2024, they actually reduced that to an hour. You get to mimic somebody. And then now also they've added roving aim, which your speed no longer reduces zero using steady aim. So quite a little boost on this little ability. Next is quite the change. In 2014, they had the ability called Imposter, which is essentially what Infiltration Expertise just became. And now is Envenom Weapon, where you can actually poison your blades and do an extra 2d6 poison damage. The target still has a fill poison save, but it does ignore resistance to poison. Whatever you've invented these weapons with is that potent. Next to level 17 is Death Strike, which functions the same. On the first round of combat, if you do a sneak attack, then the target has to make a con save or take double damage. The next subclass is Thief, which along with Assassin, I kind of view as just kind of like, to my mind, just base rogue. First thing off is Fast Hands, as you still get to use a bonus action, do a sleight of hand for like picking locks, etc., or use object. The verbiage just changed slightly, but the actual meat of the ability is the same. Next, also at level 3 is Second Story Work, which kind of functions the same. You still get to have a climb speed equal to your run speed. But when it comes to jumping, before you could actually just add the number of feet you jump as your dexterity modifier. So if you get a +3 dexterity modifier, you can add an extra 3 feet. But now you just get to use dexterity as the base for your jump ability, which kind of makes sense to me. For rogue, you might actually, the dex-based characters going to be more trained to use it that way and do long jumps in that, where instead of just a straight up strength jump. Next, level 9 is Supreme Sneak. 4, you get advantage on your stealth checks if you move no more than half your movement. In 2024, this is more of an attack ability, whereas you actually get to throw it in with your cunning action, where you actually take a d6 off your sneak attack, and you can retain your hidden invisible condition, and so long as you end your turn behind 3/4 of full cover. I can see where both would be applicable to a rogue, but I actually prefer me personally, I prefer the outside of combat piece, where you can actually, use advantage on stealth checks. Because in my mind, Supreme Sneak, by the name of the ability, I envision the thief. This is what the subclass is called, sneaking in to steal something or, infiltrate somewhere instead of being combat focused. Next at level 13 is Use Magical Device. This one changed quite a bit too. Before in 2014, you basically just removed all restrictions from the magical device and you can use it as a thief. But now in 2024, they actually, there's 3 categories. You can actually attune to a 4th item. So you can actually have more magic items functional for you at any given time. Then there's charges. And when you use a device that has charges, if you roll a d6 and you roll a 6, then whatever ability of the item you use does not actually use any charges. Then there's spell scrolls. If it's a level 1 spell, you can cast it reliably with no issue. But if it's a higher level spell, you have to make a check. And then whether or not you cast it, there's a chance it can even cause the scroll to disintegrate. Next is Thieves' Reflexes, and there's no change here. On the first round, you still get 2 turns. You take your first one at your actual initiative, then you take your second one on your initiative -10. But no change between 2014 and 2024. Next is Soul Knife, which in 2014 is not actually in the Players Handbook. It's in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. First is Psionic Power, and this is where you actually gain your psionic abilities, and you get dice to represent that. And they start at a d6 and they go on up to a d12. And then you also have 4 starting off at level 3. Then they go up as you gain in level. But this is what allows you to use your abilities. And you can actually regain them this is a change between 2014 and 2024. You can regain 1 die with a short rest now in 2024, but before you could regain 1 as a bonus action. So they backed off your ability to quickly regain a die. Then you also have Side Bolstered Knack, and there's no change here. You can still expend a die when you fail a skill check, and then you add that die to it. And you only use the die if the skill succeeds. So if you fail the roll still, even after adding the die, you do not expend the die. So that's kind of nice, but there's no change between the editions. Psychic Whispers basically functions the same. You get to basically make a telepathic psychic bond between you and a number of creatures up to your proficiency bonus. And then you can speak to them within a mile. But like one thing that I did notice that changed is that before the creature had to be able to understand language, which that's gone. But another thing too, if you did not have a common language between the characters, then you could still speak to each other in 2014. But now in 2024, they've removed that restriction. So it looks like you have to have a common language to be able to speak to each other. Psychic Blades functions basically the same, but there are a couple little tweaks that I should call out. First off, it has the Vex Mastery. So it actually has a mastery ability now. And instead of just attack actions, and now it can be pulled out on an opportunity attack. So if you gain an opportunity attack now, then you can actually pull out a Psychic Blade and use it during that opportunity attack. And also before it was a 60-foot range if thrown with no long range, but now it is actually a 60 and then 120 long range. So they've added that. So these Psychic Blades are a little bit more potent. Soul Blades functions the same. You still have Honing Strike, and you can actually use that. If you miss, you can roll a Psychic Energy die and try to hit. You add the total to the attack roll. And then also you have Psychic Teleportation, where you roll a Psychic Energy die and then you multiply the number rolled by 10, and you can teleport up to that many feet away using the Psychic Blade, the thrown Psychic Blade. Next is Psychic Veil. Essentially, no change here. You still get to become invisible for up to an hour, and it functions much like invisibility. And then you get to use this once per long rest. Or if you spend a Psionic Energy die, you can actually regain the ability as long as you have the die. So you can keep doing that between long rests, so long as you keep burning the dice. But yeah, no change. Next is Rend Mind. There's no real change here either. You still use the Psychic Blades to be able to cause them to make a wisdom save or be stunned for 1 minute. And then you can gain the ability back using 3 psionic dice. But yeah, no change here. No, that's it for the rogue changes. My takeaway from this, and so far the other classes that I've reviewed, is that they have taken away a few things here and there, but for the most part, they have boosted all of the classes and made them more powerful. I have personally already had some issues with how CRs are calculated and encounter balance. Right now, it feels like that the classes have just gone to the next level. And without the new monster manual to be able to compare changes between the monsters, we're going to have to even try a little harder with the encounter balance in our games. But we were already doing that anyway. But yeah, so that's my takeaway from this. And it does bring in some new interesting abilities like the Cunning Strikes and the Mastery tools. But yeah, that's my takeaway on the Rogue. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please hit the like or subscribe button, preferably both. And see you next time. Thanks for watching.